Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Banke with Forward Community Investments. I'd like to welcome you all to our Building Financial Sustainability, a Financial Learning Series kickoff webinar for Wausau. Just kind of wanted to go through today's agenda. We'll be having Ben Williams from Forward Community Investments. We'll be pretty much running the show, but I'll get things started. And we also have Sue Nelson from the Community Foundation of Northcentral, Wisconsin on the line, and she'll be speaking in a little bit too. But like I said, I just wanted to kind of kick things off and go through a little bit of our agenda. We do have some call-in numbers, and the access code are on a previous slide that you should have seen, but it looks like everybody is online and ready to go. Like I said, this kickoff webinar will just be outlining the 6-part learning series. We will be going briefly through each session throughout this webinar today. And we'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, like I had mentioned, Sue Nelson from the Community Foundation of Northcentral, Wisconsin, as well as the Ghidorzi companies. We'll also be touching a little bit on just about FCI and what Forward Community Investments, who we are, who we serve, and what we can offer our cohorts. Ben will also be going through our baseline evaluation. Like I said, we'll be doing an overview of the learning series as well. And we do have some homework for you. Didn't think you'd get off that easy for our session that's going to be coming up on Thursday. We'd like to come in ready to hit the ground running. And then there's also will be a section for question and answer. So without further ado, one more thing. If there are any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put those in the question box. I will be monitoring those, and like I had mentioned, at the end of this webinar, we'll be going through those. So if you got it in your head, type it out, and we'll take care of it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sue Nelson from the Community Foundation of Northcentral, Wisconsin.
Hi, Sue. Are you on the line? Sue? Hello, everyone. This is Ben Williams, by the way, from Forward Community Investments. It looks like we just lost audio with Sue. Hopefully, she'll be able to call back in, and we'll get to say a few words. I would just like to personally thank both the Ghidorzi companies and the Community Foundation of Northcentral, Wisconsin for their very generous support of this learning series. Without their help, we would not be able to offer this series. And I know from speaking with Sue at the Community Foundation, they are very excited to bring this group of nonprofits together and are really excited to learn with you and help you grow as organizations and improve your financial strength and knowledge. And I think Margaret and everyone from the Ghidorzi companies would echo those sentiments. So I would just like to take a second to thank them for allowing this series to happen. I want to just talk a little bit about FCI and give you a little bit of background on us in case you haven't heard of us before. Forward Community Investments is a community loan fund that builds capacity in nonprofits across the state through low-cost loans and expert advisory services. As one of the most established financial management advisors of its kind in Wisconsin, FCI provides guidance, resources, skills, and capacity building as a means of building a strong and secure, sustainable, and statewide nonprofit community. Listed on the screen here are our mission and vision. You know, we work very hard to transform the communities by building the capacity of nonprofit organizations, and our vision is really a strong and secure nonprofit community that can really provide great impact in each of the communities that they serve. We do this with integrity through a commitment to excellence by being good stewards and in a foundation of both innovation and collaboration. Pause for a moment. Just to go a little bit more into depth on some of the specifics of what we do and who aren't familiar with us. FCI has been around for about 20 years. We've been chartered by the U.S. Treasury as a Community Development Financial Institution, a CDFI. And historically in that way, we're known as a lender, providing access to capital to nonprofits that serve low to moderate income individuals. And over that time, we always provided training, technical assistance to borrowers. And in the past, about 4 years ago, we received an opportunity through the Department of Children and Families to expand that TA services to non-borrowing clients. And that's how the birth of our advisory services group really began. And that's a large part of that is things like this learning series here, as well as one-on-one consulting and just providing resources to organizations. Investments in FCI earn a competitive rate of return. Our investors include financial institutions, nonprofits themselves, religious organizations, and socially responsible individuals. As I said before, we're known as a lender, and we've recently opened a new opportunity for agricultural loans. And just last year, we merged with the Wisconsin Community Fund, a local grassroots grant-making organization in the state of Wisconsin. And currently, we're going through a visioning process ourselves to see how we can best combine the work that we do as lenders, as advisors, and as grant makers. Lastly, we often conduct research of the nonprofit sector. You may have seen in the past our statewide nonprofit impact report. These research initiatives really inform the types of training and services that we provide, and as we get into detail on the learning series itself that we'll be discussing, I think you'll see that how we've approached the learning in terms of what needs we meet in each of the sessions. Now I'd like to turn it to talk about you, and so we're going to start with a poll and just to see who we have with us here on the line. And so you'll soon see a poll post up, and you can type in either you're an executive director, a staff member, or a board member. And so if people can start responding to that, Tom, how are the responses looking for that? Who do we have with us on the line?
Sure. Currently right now, we started off big with executive directors, but now that's falling back to about half, 35% staff members and about 12 to 15% for board members right now. And that's holding pretty steady right now.
Great, and we're excited to have you. And if you'd like to test out the chat feature with the questions, please type your name into the box as well as your organization just to see how that works. We'll be asking questions throughout, and we'd love to get your feedback in there. So if you can try also doing that. Okay, great. It looks like we've got a little over 20 people with us today already, so that's a great thing. Again, as we go through this, the first question I'd like to ask everyone is what do you most want to get out of the learning series? This is a question that we'll come back to as we go through each session. We want to make sure that this series is tailored to your interests and needs. And as we go through each of the sessions in their description, a big part of our work with you is to provide some information and resources for how you can use these skills. We also want to make sure that you get the opportunity to apply it to your organization. So if you could enter in the post as we go, as well as we'll take a few moments now just to say, what would you most like to get out of this 6-part learning series? So you can post those, those wishes and wants in the questions, and we'll come back to them and address them near the end of the sessions. So to provide a little bit of overview on each of the sessions that we will be providing and just the learning series as a whole, it comes in several parts. As I mentioned before, there's the classroom learning, which will be the sessions that we'll be having together for the 4 hours that we work together. Within that learning series session, there's a case study of a nonprofit organization that we worked with in the past to illustrate how they applied these concepts to their organization and the difference that it made in them. And so as we go through the teaching, we'll also have this case study to walk through and show how it's been applied there, as well as giving time for you to apply these concepts during the classroom learning to your own organization. That's a big part of why we ask in our applications for you to include your strategic plans if you have them, your budgets, your income statement and balance sheets, because these are things that we'll want to have you bring with you to the session so that you can be applying these concepts and skills to your organization. In addition, Tom mentioned the homework that will be assigned before. We try to provide extra reading that'll be sent out before and after each of the sessions just to give you a little bit more in-depth information and learning about that topic, and I'll talk about 2 of those readings that we'll have before our session next week, and we'll just talk about those as a cohort together to see how that can best be used for you. Another part of the series that is important to touch on is individual coaching. We've found, from personal experience and also as providing training, that when you leave a session really excited about applying those skills, you often have many more questions once you start actually, when the rubber hits the road and you're providing those services in your organization. And so throughout the series, we're going to have time dedicated to individual coaching sessions with each organization, and we'll get together and talk about whatever issues, whether it be from the topic that we just finished in the previous session, a different issue that's come up in your organization, and we'll work with you on that and provide some one-on-one TA and advice. In addition to the actual learning sessions that we'll have, we have our virtual leadership series. Our next session is actually this upcoming Tuesday with David Bornstein, a New York Times columnist and author about social innovation, and it'll be a great conversation. I strongly recommend you all attend. I think it'll be a really an interesting thing. Lastly, and I think this is the most important part for you, is that we want to make sure that you have all of the tools and resources possible to apply the learning and skills that you gain in the sessions to your organization afterwards. And so through that, there's a lot of tools in terms of the finance, the strategy, and the capacity building that you can use with your organization afterwards and in follow-ups as we go through it. And I think this is really a critical part of what makes this session so valuable for you. So a common question that we get after the application, and this was asked in the application as well, is who should attend for my organization? And, it's great to hear how many executive directors have attended. I think this is a critical person as the leader of an organization to be attending. But who should come with that executive director? Program staff leaders are more than welcome to come. Finance managers are welcome, and also board members. Now, for each session, you can have up to 3 members from your organization attend, but who those 3 members are can rotate based on need, particularly with board members. I know they may not be able to commit time to attend each and every session, although it's great if and when they can. But if they can attend even just one of those to see it, I'd strongly recommend you maximize the amount of participants that come and have 3 at each session. I think the learning as a group will really help when you break out into sessions to talk about how we apply this to our own organization, but it also helps later when you're actually just in the organization working to have had more than one person at the session. We find this to be the most effective way to make change happen effectively. Tom mentioned a baseline evaluation. An important part of our learning curriculum and design is understanding what situations our participants and cohort, you as nonprofits, are facing and what skill level and experience you have with each of these topics. So at the beginning of the session next week on Thursday, we'll ask you to fill out a short baseline survey to see how comfortable you are with these different topics, how much you use them, and just go into a little bit more detail than what we covered in the initial application. And this is really important for us to make sure that the learning is targeted to what you need and what you're getting out of it is the most valuable. If everything that you're hearing you already know and apply, then it wasn't as valuable for you. Or if it's so foreign and goes too fast, too quickly, that isn't helpful either. And so we want to make sure we tailor it to fit everyone's needs and interests. And again, we'll be completing this at the very beginning of the session. After the series, there'll be a final evaluation, which will be very similar to the baseline, but compare how much you've gained from the session. And also connected in there will be a series of actionable items that you'll commit to for what you'll get done and apply to your organization over the next 2, 4, and 6 months. And this is a way that we can help keep you accountable to improving your organization. We'll check in and follow up and see if there's other resources that you need or other questions that you have that we can help with. I think this has been a really helpful thing for the organizations that have participated in the past, being able to apply it to their organization over a long-term period. So this next slide outlines each of the sessions that we'll be having. The one next week on the 18th, Building Capacity is Building Success, will be our first one to kick it off. Following that, we'll have a session on how to integrate strategy into your organization and how that connects to your finances and how you can build in your strategic thinking on a day-to-day and activity-to-activity basis. The next 4 sessions are much more targeted towards the finances of your organization and understanding different types of budgets, how you can budget for success, how to integrate strategic outputs, outcomes, and goals into your budget so that as you review what your budget will be going forward, you can also think of how that relates to your mission goals and impact. Calculating true program costs. This is really a critical session for nonprofits that we found from our research, is that organizations often don't know what it truly costs to serve any one individual. And so as they're experiencing increasing demand, they don't know how that's going to impact their cost structure. And so understanding how to calculate those true program costs and allocate indirect expenses will be the focus of our 4th session. Our 5th session on managing cash flow, this is about projecting your cash flow moving forward. You know, when you look at your budget and your income statements and comparing those to actuals, that's kind of looking at what's happened in the past. Managing cash flow is about projecting what will happen going forward and how can we act differently and strategically to make sure that we don't end up in a cash flow crisis or a cash crunch. Lastly, and then as a wrap-up, putting the fun into nonprofit finance. This is where we take all that we've learned in terms of strategic thinking, organizational capacity building, and our financial skill set, and how do we communicate that information effectively to our board, to our staff, to our stakeholders and funders, and how do we manage this over a long period of time to ensure that we reach a stable and secure organization that can really have the most impact both financially and mission impact and mission goals. That's kind of a big picture look at what each of these sessions are going. I would encourage you to think strongly about who you'd like to attend for each session for your organization. I know many of you have already committed to who those people will be, and we're looking forward to having them. But if there is some question and you say, what board member could value each of these things, you know, the building capacity and strategy sessions, it's good to often have some board representation there. And as you go through the finances, it's good to have them understand more closely what are those challenges facing my organization, and it really creates a great opportunity for communication. So I wanted to give a brief overview on each of these sessions now. I'd also like to pause and take a second to thank people who've been posting questions to the question box for what they'd like to get out of it. As you hear more about what the sessions will involve, feel free to throw in more questions that you have towards what we're doing. Again, we'll be answering those at the end of the session. So just in a little more depth, the agenda for the first session on building capacity. Organizational capacity building is really the ability to effectively deliver your mission. And we start with this session first because it's really important to have a strong understanding of where we are now as we look forward to what we can do and where we can go next in the future. And so we'll provide a framework for understanding and exploring your organization using the 9 key elements of organizational effectiveness that we've seen, and provide you with some tools that will help you assess the capacity of your organization and also create action plans for how you can improve on areas of opportunity and really leverage those strengths that your organization already has. So that'll be the agenda for our first session. In addition to the baseline evaluation and kind of a welcome to the cohort, this will take up the majority of that time. So for thought and discussion, this is the homework, and I'll send out these articles to you later, but there's two key articles that I think will be really illustrative for you. One is the nonprofit life cycle stages. There's a Fieldstone Alliance summary which just kind of compiles academic research and the research of other consultants into a really concise document that talks about the different stages that organizations go through and how those challenges are different based on each stage of the organization. I'm just going to scroll over to that here. And so you'll see, you know, there's different stages. The first one they call Imagine and Inspire. This is really when organizations are just starting. Stage 2 is the founding and the framing. This is as they build up their capacity and are really starting to define what the program is that they're offering. The third stage is really as they grow into a long-term organization and how they do that. And then the fourth is how they sustain that growth of their programs. And then the stage 5 is really a changing stage. This is where, what you've been doing in the past may no longer be something that can continue, and you need to make adjustments to how your programs are delivered and what types of services you offer. And so this is really a nice article in terms of the life stages to really outline what your organization does and provide some good feedback for what we'll be doing in the rest of the session. The second article that'll be helpful for reading is an Executive Director's Guide to Financial Leadership. This was written about 2 years ago by Kate Barr from the Minnesota Nonprofit Assistance Fund, a sister organization to Forward Community Investments that works in the state of Minnesota. And I believe another author from Compass Point. And they really talk about what it means to be a financial leader at the head of an organization and what those types of challenges are. And a lot of those points that they touch on in that article were what we'll be addressing in the learning series, particularly in the last 3 sessions and 4 sessions that focus on budgeting, program costs, cash flow, and understanding your financial metrics and using dashboards to really communicate what you do. So I want to open it up to have a Q&A for a little bit and just hear, what kind of questions do you have about the learning series? What do you hope to get out of the sessions? And if there's any information that we can provide now that will help improve the clarity as we go forward. Tom, I see that there's some great questions that people have kind of kicked off already. Would you be able to introduce a few of those?
Sure, yeah. Throughout the webinar, we've gotten a few questions or a few comments about what you would all like to take away from the learning series. A couple of them that were mentioned were best practices in financial management, sustainability seem to be a pretty current theme, how to focus on resources, and specifically how to get out of crisis when you don't have the capital or money to hire an individual to solve that solution. How do you get ahead of those crises? And some comments that they're looking forward to calculating true program costs and some successful budgeting as well.
Great. Those are some wonderful questions, and I'd like to touch on a couple of those points. I think there's an overarching sense, from the summary you gave, Tom, of how do we manage to be sustainable in what we do and still deliver the services that our communities need. I think this is the challenge that every nonprofit organization faces, and it's one of the first questions we ask ourselves when we come in that day. What do I need to do today to help improve my organization and deliver these services to the people? I think what we'll be talking about in this session in terms of looking at your capacity as a whole will be a great framing for what are we doing really well and what can we do to reach our mission in a more effective way. The strategy session will really focus on how do we integrate those strategic thinking. I think everyone has experiences with strategic planning that have been kind of negative, where you create an 80-page document and then it just collects dust on the shelf. Our model of strategy that we encourage people to use and we'll be showing to you, and we'll really focus on how do we apply this on a day-to-day basis to the changing decisions that face us. When we look back 3 years ago and we say what we thought would be here, in 2013, I don't think we'd be at the same place. So how do we come up with a way to think strategically that can be flexible and reactive enough to a changing environment? And that's really where that session will come in. Those concepts about financial sustainability and how do we reach ourselves out of these crises, this is really about those big questions that our organization faces, and I'll be touching the strategy as well. But the financial side of those things and the budgeting and the calculating true program costs, this is really about understanding your organization on a financial lens. Strategy is very important, but we often say the budget is the financial translation of that strategy. And so how do we integrate our budget to really reach those goals will be a big focus on it. I think those are great. I'm seeing a few other people mention some new issues, and I think the questions that people have been raising are what are those things that keep us up at night kind of questions, and really being able to define those as an organization strategically will be an important thing, and we'll talk about that a lot in our August session. And then moving forward, how do we pay for it and how do we make sure that it can remain sustainable in the long term is what we'll seek to do in the next sessions with our financial learning topics. Great. I'm really excited to hear all of those questions. I think you'll find these sessions to be really valuable for you in terms of providing topics. Are there any other questions about the learning series itself, or what's needed in terms of coming up going forward that people have? You know, I'm looking through the questions and I'm not seeing any that really face those areas. Again, I'll send out Tom will be sending out a logistics reminder with some of the details. Again, we'll be meeting next week, Thursday, July 18th, from 12:30 to 4:30 at Northcentral Technical College. We're looking forward to seeing you there. We'll be sure to have signs up, and we'll be available a little bit early in advance. You know, we took a whole hour just to book the time for this. I don't expect that we'll need all of that now as it's just approaching 12:30. But if there are any other questions, I'm happy to remain on the line. Tom, do you see anything else that's come up?
There was a question regarding how are we going to get those links to the homework and things like that. I believe those will be sent out in my email to all attendees following the webinar, so we can get those out there.
Yep. Yep. And so like Tom said, we'll be sending out links to this presentation and a recording for anyone in your organization that wasn't able to attend. Please feel free to forward that on. You know, I think we have the contact information for whoever from the organization has applied and who they sent it to. But if there's anyone else that you think will be attending the session that may not have that information, please do forward that on to them.
Sure. And there was also a question of which building at Northcentral Technical College will be in. I'll have to look into that. I know the room number, but that will be sent out in the logistics reminder as well.
Great. And we'll be sending that early next week?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. You know, just on behalf, again, of the Community Foundation and Ghidorzi Companies, we are really excited to bring this learning series to you and excited to meet you and have you meet each other for those that may not know each other. I think this will be a great opportunity to learn together and grow our organizations as a cohort, and I'm really excited to see you. Again, if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to email Tom or I. We are more than happy to answer any questions as they come up. I believe we have our contact information listed on the last page. You can email us at advisoryservices@forwardci.org, or you're more than welcome to give us a call. You can visit our website. And again, thank you very much for attending, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon.